Hey, today I'm going to voice my most unpopular opinion, it's basically I'm doing a commercial for my Commander's Compendium. I'm going to talk to you about the thought process behind one of the proposed rules changes that's in the compendium, which is a compendium of optional rules that you can pick and choose from what you like for your pack. I already know that one tournament is implementing quite a lot of them, which is very cool. And as me and David have said multiple times, the compendium is not meant for you to take every single rule from it. It's just if you want to balance, then pick rule that will try and fix that. Right? Today I'm going to talk about close combat, which I think is my most unpopular opinion. Anywho, let me just take you to the PowerPoint. Here we go. So this is the case for close quarters. And the disclaimer is obviously that, I forgot to erase something. The disclaimer is this is basically me arguing for why I think that the slight rules modification that we have in the Commander's Compendium, why we made it. It's not something that I'm arguing that you should use. It's not something that I'm arguing that Warlord Games should change the rules. It is just how we view the compendium and a proposed change to what's happening, right? And I, of course, have to be upfront and say, I know that I'm not in a majority here. I know that other people dislike close combat. There are lots of other people who think that close combat is now way better than it was. I think it's a lot worse. I think basically it's disappeared from the game, and I miss it. I liked close combat. I have to say that up front. I'm one of the people who liked close combat. And of course I played a close combat army, so that's easy to say. But I did that because I liked that feeling, right? It's not just because it was good and it made me win stuff, right? I liked it because of the way it played. So, anywho, that was the disclaimers. So the competing claims here are that close quarters is now a lot more realistic in V3, or close quarters is completely unbalanced and more or less dead in V3. That's the competing claims, okay? And I'm going to argue for why I think that my claim that close combat is dead is potentially more likely, and why I think it's weird the way that close combat is being handled, and then I'm going to show you the fix that we have in the Commander's Compendium. So if we think about combat in bold action, we have three combat ranges, right? We have long range fire, we have point blank fire, and then we have close quarters. Now, if we look at long-range fire, like a rifle, for instance, if we look at the effective range of rifles in World War II, it was about 200 to 300 yards. Most effective rifle fire was at that range. Most effective LMG fire was a little bit longer, so about 300 yards-ish. That sort of gives us the same measurement in yards per inch, by the way. It gives us 8.3 yards per inch, because 24 inches equal to 200 yards. That means 8.3. 36 inches equal to 300 yards equals 8.3. So it's someone has actually studied this and said, well, if an LMG fires effectively at that range, then a rifle fires effectively at that range. It makes sense, like in real life. That means that if we are using 8.3, then close point blank range is 50 yards. Which is kind of weird, right? 50 yards. At 50 yards, you're not absolutely sure that you'll hit like 90%, 85% of the time, which is what you'll do in bold action, right? Because you got +2 to hit at that range. Unless you have a rifle, then you're 50-50, right? At 50 yards? 50 yards, that's not like up close and personal. And it's definitely not as up close and personal enough for you to ignore that the enemy hits the ground, crouches down behind cover. There's something odd going on there. So, and then we get to close quarters. What does close quarters actually represent? Now, if I look in Wikipedia, close quarters, the definition is that close quarter combat is close combat situation between multiple combatants involving ranged, firearm-based, or melee combat, hand-to-hand combat. So, according to Wikipedia, close quarters is not just hand-to-hand knives, basically. It's also ranged combat. But in the rulebook, there's no definition of what close quarters actually covers. It says, charging across open ground to engage the enemy at close quarters was always a dangerous proposition. Page 106 in the rulebooks. Okay. Yes, I guess so. I mean, in V3, you're going to run straight into defensive fire, which will kill half your unit. So yes, it's definitely a dangerous proposition. But what close quarters actually represent, the range that it represents, not defined. So some people have said, well, there are so few bayonet wounds in World War II, so it's realistic that close quarters is gone from the game. I disagree. Close quarters combat, if we think of that as representing, yes, bayonets, but also you using your SMGs and like in the same room within 10 meters, 15 yards, whatever, using hand grenades, all of that, I think, should also represent close quarters. So what are the different advantages? And this is also one of the things that I find weird about the combat system of bold action, right? At long range, the attacker is massively favored, right? As the attacker, you're very likely to at least hit and pin the opponent, which makes it harder for the opponent to do stuff. Or you can even make him go down, which means that he doesn't do stuff at all. Maybe you'll give a couple of casualties. So the advantage for long range fire is to the one who actually does stuff, the one who shoots, right? If you go to point blank, this is even more pronounced. At point blank, the attacker has massive advantages. They are a lot more likely to hit. The opponent cannot go down and benefit from that. And it's very likely to cripple the defender. Point blank range fire. However, if we go even closer, close quarters, suddenly that shifts. At close quarters range, the defender suddenly has all the advantages, right? So it goes from the attacker's advantage to the attacker's massively advantage to the defender's advantaged. Why? I don't know. I don't understand why this is. Yes, I understand that charging into a room is a difficult proposition and possibly costly, but it's also like I don't get it, right? Why this is unbalanced, right? The defender suddenly gets defensive fire, so he gets to shoot out of turn, then they get to fight out of turn, and they get to fight even if they've already done stuff. So you can potentially activate your unit twice if you get attacked, right? You may even get defensive fire, no, not defensive fire, but if you're in ambush, right? You can shoot the enemy at point blank range as well. So potentially you can wipe them out before they even engage in close quarters fighting. And most of the time, sometimes at least, the defender gets to fight first as well. So you shoot them first, and then you fight first, and then the opponent may actually get to throw one single hand grenade. Okay. Right? At worst, at absolute worst, you get to shoot and then fight simultaneous. what the is happening here, right? This is, as a game balance, not balanced. As a game balance, this is unbalanced and suddenly favors the defender massively. Now, in the old version 2, the long range fire actually favored the defender a little bit because you're very likely to not get hit. Now, not so. The attacker is favored. The attacker is favored at point blank, and the defender is favored in close quarters. I don't get it. What has happened to close quarters in tournaments? Well, it stopped. It doesn't happen. Not a lot anyway. And when it does, you're very likely to lose your unit that has engaged in that close quarters. The assaulter is very likely to lose the unit within 2 activations. Now the only units that can reliably go in and win close combats are Gurkhas and Polish Lancers. And they were already overpowered in V2. Now they're the only units that actually can do this reliably. So what does the Commander's Compendium propose? And we had a lot of thinking about this, and it's not actually our rule. This is a rule that I borrowed from Russell Wright. He's used this rule and made it for the first version, the first tournament of version 3 was World Open War, and he used this rule there. It's called Enhanced Assault, and the rebalancing is that if the assaulters can charge a unit that is down, then they move the timing of the close quarters one in their favor. So if the units that being charged, the defenders, are down and in the open, then the assaulters would actually go first. But if the unit would get defended obstacle but are down, then the fight is simultaneous because they're not actually defending their obstacle, right? So that is, and it's a slight rebalancing, but it does mean a difference, and it does create tactical decisions for both the defender and the attacker, right? Because as the attacker, you now, if you have, you need 2 units, right? One of them will shoot at a possible defender. Now that the defender has a choice, do I go down to lessen the effect of that fire, but then I'll get charged? Or do I stay up and take more casualties? And tactical decisions are fun. So the Commander's Compendium, if you want to rebalance close quarters at your event, this is a potential way of doing it. You can actually allow the attackers maybe to go a little bit earlier than they would have if the defenders are down. Right, that was it from me today. Now I'm going to go and pack up to go to the Danish Nationals this weekend. Thank you so much, David Hasselfeld, for all the work you've put into the Commander's Compendium. Link to the Commander's Compendium is in the description for this video. Thank you all for tuning in. I'll see you in the weekend. I'll give you updates how my games are going. Cheers.